Museums are always a fun visit. There is so much history in the walls that they will never fail to amaze us. From coins, vases, swords, to pictures and furniture, we get to learn a lot from our ancestors from them. But there are also some strange things found in museums. Let's take a look at some of the weirdest museums in the world. Number 11. Magoro Parasitological Museum. If worms, insects, and parasites are not really your thing, or if you are a little queasy, it would be a better idea if you never visited the Magoro Parasitological Museum. And if we are being truthful, if there ever was a list of weird things to collect, this museum would hold some of the highest rated ones. Do you want to meet the world's longest tapeworm? Go ahead! An 8.8 meter long giant tapeworm is waiting for you. There are over 45,000 immersed and prepared parasite specimens in the collection here, accompanied by over 50,000 books on the same. And even though the contents in the museum are really weird and puke-worthy, it is still a very popular tourist attraction. But one thing that you will definitely be grateful for is that the creatures you see are on display in jars and not inside you. And if by any chance you do develop a fancy for them, there is a souvenir shop as well. Number 10. Iceland Phallological Museum. We all love our thing, but still, the sight of one which does not belong to us is enough to give the heebie-jeebies. And even if that statement holds true for you, stay away from the Iceland Phallological Museum. It is probably the only museum in the world where phallic specimens or penises belonging to all types of mammal in a single country are collected. There are over 276 penises, ranging from hamsters to that of sperm whales. The collection is actually an exhaustive one and contains penises of all mammals found in the sea or on land in Iceland. Oh yes, and there are also human samples here, and the first was donated as recently as 2011. Oh! Number 9. Instant ramen noodles. Now we all love these instant noodles, but for bachelors and brokes, this is pretty much a lifesaver on many occasions. But still, to have an entire museum dedicated to instant noodles is not something most of us would believe. And yet, in Japan, there is a museum dedicated to the creator of ramen instant noodles where you can see many specimens of the noodles. Lovers of the noodles will actually rejoice at the sight of the museum, as one can also witness the birth of the chicken ramen through a faithful recreation of the work shed where it was originally invented. You can also learn about the surprisingly rich history of the ramen noodles here, and even take part in quizzes. And in a really fun activity, you can visit a cup noodle box-shaped interactive theater as well. Also, you can make some of our own in the kitchen, and there is an exhaustive catalog of every ramen noodle ever. Number 8. Cancun Underwater Museum. When you think of a museum, you obviously think of roaming around its large halls, examining the artifacts and discussing it with your friends. And while you may not be able to discuss anything with your friends while at the Cancun Underwater Museum, floating through the exhibits is actually a very good way to explore a museum. Yes, that's right. Floating. As its name suggests, the Cancun Underwater Museum in Mexico is actually located at the bottom of the ocean floor in the National Marine Park. There are over 500 sculptures there, and it is a major tourist draw. And the best part? The statues are made of pH natural clay, so the corals can grow as it serves as an artificial reef as well. Number 7. The Museum of Broken Relationships. Yeah, the name sounds weird, and the museum is basically just what it says. Located in the beautiful Kalmar Palace of Zagreb, Croatia, the museum is dedicated to heartbreaks that people have suffered. The exhibits that are displayed here are actually personal objects left over from former lovers, and each of them are accompanied by a brief note explaining the object. What is interesting is that the museum is actually a crowdsourced place, and was conceptualized by a traveling collection of donated items before it found a permanent home in the Kalmar realm or palace. In fact, the museum has also won awards for its innovativeness. All in all, a visit to the Museum of Broken Relationships is sure to leave you with a heavy heart. Although, you may take solace in saying of having loved and lost is better than not having loved at all. Number 6. International Cryptozoology Museum. Considering that it is not really an exact science, it is weird to have a museum dedicated to it. Cryptozoology is the study of animals and creatures that exist in myth and lore and have no scientific verification yet. But anyone interested in legend should visit this museum in the United States, as it contains exhibits like Bigfoot, mermaids, and others. And to top it all off, even if you are a non-believer, you will not be able to ignore some of the so-called evidence of the existence of these mythical creatures. Number 5. The Torture Museum. Walking down the streets of Europe today, it is hard to imagine the tortures that were committed here. But just a few centuries ago, torture and public killings were a very normal part of life. Almost each city had a gallows and a scaffolding along with a torture chamber to get information out of those thought to be involved in conspiracies, including witches. Thankfully, that time has passed, but today, as a memory to the pains of the past, there is a museum in Amsterdam where these devices can still be seen. From the Inquisition chair to the guillotine, there are over 40 instruments of punishments housed in the museum. What's more is that there are guided tours for schools as well in order to educate the children about the wrongs of torture and killing. And just in case you are one of those who are kind of fascinated by the gory medieval history, the Torture Museum in Amsterdam is just the place for you. Number 4. Museum of Mummies. Okay, so this is probably one of the scariest museums in the world as well. And not because of the mummies themselves, but how they are made. The Museum of Mummies in Guanajuato, Mexico, contains a number of naturally mummified bodies which were the result of a cholera outbreak in the city around 1833. As you can imagine, the mummies usually have a face which clearly tells us how much pain they were in. But of course, no one had really thought of a museum. It was just that the climate of Guanajuato is such that it led to a type of natural mummification, although scientists think that the bodies were embalmed to some degree. The reason for these bodies to be displayed was that there was a local task which was levied for a more perpetual burial, but those who could not were disinterred. And some of the bodies which were in the best conditions were housed in a nearby building. Soon, the bodies gained a little fame and people started to visit, and thus, the idea of the museum was born. The total number of mummies found there today are around 111. Number 3. Kafka Museum. Franz Kafka was one of the most influential authors ever, so it really does not come as that big of a surprise that someone would dedicate a museum to him. But what sets this museum apart from others dedicated to authors is that the museum actually recreates the mood of the author for you to experience firsthand. The museum is situated in Prague, and one can view some of the first editions of the books written by the great Kafka, and you can also find many correspondence, diaries, manuscripts, photographs, and other items which give an insight into the life of Franz Kafka. Number 2. Paris Sewers Museum. Paris is a beautiful and interesting city. But what you might not know is that even the area under the city is pretty interesting. There is a complex labyrinth which is basically the Paris sewer system that extends almost as large as the city itself. It stretches out to about 2,100 kilometers, whose construction began in the 1850s. The network of tunnels are an interesting place to explore, as there is a museum which one can visit as well. There were facilities for exploring them in carts and boats, but have since been replaced with the Paris Sewers Museum. It is in fact a must-see for anyone interested in engineering, public works, or in fact Les Miserables. All in all, it is one of the weirdest museums in the world, with artifacts like sewer maintenance equipment, mannequins of workers in full gear, huge wooden cleaning balls, and many others. Oh, and there is a gift shop as well, if you want to take your memories of the Paris sewers home. Number 1. The International Spy Museum. Spies are generally one of the coolest things ever, and many of us had childhood fantasies of becoming a spy when we grew up. One of the most amazing things about spies are the gadgets that they use. And so, Washington, D.C. decided to open a museum dedicated to spy equipment. It is the largest public collection of espionage artifacts in the world. The devices on display here include spy cameras, disguised weapons, counterfeit money, and cipher machines. What's more is that the museum is actually a pretty fun place where you can participate in interactive spy adventures and relive some of the most interesting histories of spies. So if you happen to be around Washington, D.C. ever, do visit the International Spy Museum to indulge your childhood fantasies. So that was our list of the weirdest museums. Do you think we have missed out on any? Do let us know what your experience was and if they are as interesting as they sound in real life in the comments section below. And do remember to subscribe to our channel to get instant alerts every time we put out a new video.